Welcome to Adulting on the Spectrum. I am Andrew Comro, an autistic certified financial planner. I co-run Adulting on the Spectrum with Eileen Lamb. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, everyone. In this podcast, we want to highlight real voices of autistic adults, not just inspirational stories, but people like us talking about their day-to-day life and what autism means for them. Basically, we want to give a voice to a variety of autistic people. And our guest today is Peri.
Peri is a 24-year-old autistic woman. After many years of her family wanting answers, she was finally diagnosed with moderate to severe autism at age 11, which was pretty late despite the obvious signs she was showing. She didn't say her first word until the age of 6 and didn't say much else after that until she was 10. She wants to raise awareness about being nonverbal in such a strong verbal world.
Hi, Peri. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've been following you for a while, and I love what you post and your story. So I'm excited to have you here. We want to ask our guests how they like to identify. And by that, I mean, do you like to say, I have autism, or I'm autistic, I'm on the spectrum? What's your preference?
I like to say I have autism. Because I like being Peri first, then autism, really. I prefer that. But either way, I don't really mind. But I have a preference towards that a bit more.
I like that. I like to be Peri first. Yeah, that's a great reason to use person with autism. Yeah, I want to be Eileen first.
So when you were diagnosed with autism, sounds like a difficult process. It also sounds like it took a lot longer than it should have. What can you tell us about that?
Okay. It took a very long time. My family went to like different doctors, different teachers, and they I know some of the doctors said that I was too severe to have girl autism back then. It was very like people thought boy autism, girl autism existed, which obviously it doesn't. Autism doesn't have a gender. Functioning labels don't have a gender, all that, but that was probably the main thing back then. But yeah, I was too severe to be a girl on the spectrum, because to them, girls on the spectrum should have acted a certain way, and I didn't. So yeah.
And you say you didn't speak until you didn't say your first word until you were 6, and then you didn't speak until you were 10. So if not autism, what did the doctors think was going on?
They thought it was either laziness. They thought it was I was just really mentally slow. But yeah, between laziness or just being slow, that's what they just put it down to.
Wow, that's really sad.
Yeah.
It looks like you have a great relationship with your family, and that they really fought for you and for you to get the help you needed when you were younger. Is that right? Can you tell us more about them?
Yeah, so I'm from a big family, 5 sisters, 5 brothers. And yeah, they were all pretty supportive. I was raised by my grandma on my dad's side, and my dad and my siblings, and they all fought really hard to try and get me the right help, and fought for answers even when they were unsure themselves and that. So yeah, definitely helped.
I mean, you didn't even have supportive doctors and professionals, so I can't even imagine what your life would have been like if your family wasn't supportive. It's important. Even to these days, there are a lot of people who are autistic and who don't have the support of their family, and that can make things really hard for them. And yeah, I'm glad you had that support, at least, even though it was difficult for you. And I'm sorry you had to go through all of that.
So we like to talk about adulthood on the spectrum here, obviously. It looks like you've had quite a wild ride when it comes to college education. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, okay. So from the age of 11 to 19, I was in a special needs school. So that really really, really helped. It was basically a school where you learned just the typical subjects, but on top of that, there was other classes like speech therapy and occupational therapy and physical therapy and different types of, things like that. And I feel like those really helped, lessons to help us with our communication and our relationships and friendships and just our behaviors. And it was um it was tough going, some days I really didn't like it, but looking back to it, I'm very glad that I went there and I was able to be in a school like that taught me the skills that I needed. I feel like a lot of people look at those sort of places and they see it as places that they see it as sort of not great because they feel like, oh, they're making you less autistic. No, they're just giving us the skills that everyone else has, but we haven't. Like, why shouldn't we be taught those skills everyone else has? So that was really good. So then I left at 19 and I went to a mainstream college. So just a college for like just a typical college setting. And that was very, very difficult. I feel like one of the downsides of the school was that I was kind of sheltered. I was used to having one-to-one staff and small classes, and so when I went into a mainstream college, it was like a massive change. And I didn't really get the support that I deserved. 3 weeks into the course, they told me that I needed to drop out and that I was going to fail, and that they basically made it their business to basically try and get me off the course. But I wouldn't. I wanted to see it to the end. I was like, if I fail, I fail. I just want to finish because I like to finish things. And eventually I finished and I passed, and I was the only person that got accepted into all my university offers and all that. So I definitely proved them wrong, because they kept saying that someone who went to a school like mine, someone who had a background like mine, wouldn't have passed. So I kind of gave them the toolbox for other people like me who would join their college in the future. So I like that. But
That
yeah,
is
it was
amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah, it's I can't believe they said that, and I'm so glad you pushed through and you stayed till the end to prove them wrong. It's a great story. It's inspirational.
One of the things that you want to talk about is being non-verbal. Now, do you have a preference on non-verbal versus non-speaking? I know there seems to be a very similar amount of people who say how we should identify. I also have an opinion on non-verbal, non-speaking. Do they mean something different to you, first off?
Not really. They mean the same thing to me.
Okay.
Yeah, they mean the same.
Good. I just want to make sure we're respectful of that preference as well. So I think with many people, and although, I didn't speak until I was 3 or 4, I know, others on our podcast, Stephen Shore, others, didn't speak until later. But I think you're probably, one of the first guests we've had who didn't, speak and speak of significance for, many, many years, and now is, well spoken. So you remember what it was like to not speak, right? So what can you share out there, and what would you like to share about what it was like not being able to speak? Because I don't remember it. You do, and what helped you? If you could tell us more about that.
Yeah, okay. So it was I just remember it being like I don't know, like frustrating. it was like I was in this like goldfish bowl just looking in, and I knew I could see that everyone was doing this thing that I couldn't. Talking is verbal communication is such a massive part of everyone's lives. It's used even in ways that we just don't think about because it's just automatic in that. And it's so puzzling and mind-boggling when you're around that, but you just can't do it. Definitely. So I have a sister who is 2 years younger than me, and I remember just being, I don't know, like perplexed that she could talk and I couldn't. And it was frustrating because I knew that I was older and I knew she was younger, and I just couldn't put it really together. And I feel like it got so frustrating that some days I would just be more kind of like out of this world and into my world, and those are the days where people just thought that I didn't really know what was going on, and I kind of just went into my own world, and I didn't really even want to interact, and I didn't even feel the frustration. And that happened because I felt like, well, if I can't communicate, then what's the point in being here? Like, in my world, at least, people know me. I can communicate without talking. Communication is just an abstract sort of concept there. But yeah, frustrating is probably one of the main words, and that I would describe it. Just knowing on the days that where I was a bit more with it, I would understand what I wanted to say and what I wanted to do. Like if I was in pain, that was a big one. Like I knew I was in pain and I couldn't tell anyone, or if I was hungry and I couldn't tell anyone. And I just thought, like, I don't know, like just why. And I would get irritated and angry, and I think that's why I would be quite angry all the time. I know my family, we joke that I was just furious like 24/7. I was angry all the time, and I think that's because I couldn't communicate and I didn't really understand why I couldn't communicate. And I think not understanding why was like a big thing. So yeah, so
But during that time, you were aware of everything that was going on around you?
yes, like I said, some days I would be completely unaware. Some days, and I think that's when the frustration got bad, and I would like invert into my own world. But most of the time, yeah, I did know, and I was completely aware of what was going on, but I just couldn't like connect it. I felt like I was just one sort of piece away from connecting it all, and I just couldn't find that piece.
What do you think changed from when you were 10 to now that allowed you to be able to communicate verbally?
I'm not really sure. Like I get this question a lot, and I don't really know. Like it could be a numerous of things. It could be just time. Maybe I just needed time. And I think, yeah.
Question. So because you weren't diagnosed until later in life, therefore you did not really have, obviously, no PECs, obviously, no AAC. iPads didn't even exist then. How did we live before those? But, do you think that if you had been given, AAC device, and I know this is a little, hypothetical, do you think that you'd still be non-speaking today? Was it the frustration of not being able to communicate and not be able to speak? Was that what eventually made you overcome that challenge and why you can speak now? If you had an alternative method of communication, do you think you would be still non-speaking? And if you could go back in time, would you choose the path now, or would you prefer to be non-speaking?
Um, that's a very interesting and complicated question, and I think it's I don't know, obviously when I was very young, I was taught sign language and Makaton and that, but I just couldn't get on with it. They tried and tried, and I just didn't get on with it, with that sort of form of communication, because I was actually, when I was very young, from I think it was 5 to 7, I was put into a special needs school for 2 years, but I left because of numerous reasons. And I think so. I did have things PECs and stuff, but I don't know. I just don't think I got on with it very well. I think PECs was useful, but it was just the continuous having to use them continuously. I don't think some days I would be able to use them, some days I didn't, because I seem to go in and out of aggression quite a lot daily. So I feel like if I had an ACC device, I don't know, I feel like it would have definitely made things easier. And I feel like I still would have spoken, because even though I speak now, I will always say that writing, writing, typing, all that sort of stuff is my true voice. My verbal voice helps me with basic demands of what I need and stuff like that, but my true voice comes out in writing. So I feel like even with the ACZ device, I probably would have talked. I don't think it would have prevented it, because I just don't think my verbal voice is truly the voice that I know that I have. So
Yeah, and it's been proven that using AAC doesn't delay language. If anything, it helps, because you're practicing communication when you're using AAC. And on top of it, every time a child or an adult makes a demand on the AAC device, he can hear the words. For instance, my son Charlie will say, "I want eat cookie." And so he will hear it every time he presses the button on his AAC device. He will actually hear it. And, it helps with language for that reason. There is a lot of information around that using a device will delay language. And I don't think that's true.
No, yeah, I actually agree. It kind of relates. When I was little, my brother had this train station thing, and you could record it, and I became obsessed with it. I would carry it around completely, and I would just walk around with it and play with it. My family noticed that I was recording conversations, what they were saying, and I was playing it back, and I was mimicking the conversations that I was had recorded. So I think just hearing something like that helped me. So I was actually kind of helping myself, and it took them a while to actually realize what I was doing. But yeah, I thought that was quite clever and quite similar in a way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think a lot of parents and people are going to be intrigued by this conversation, because it's for so many autistic people who are nonverbal, we don't know exactly what's going on, because a lot of them can communicate to an extent that makes us understand what's going on when they're nonverbal. But you have that perspective because you gained a voice, if I can say. Now you can explain to us, and it's just a perspective that we don't get to hear very often at all. And I'm really thankful for you sharing your story and talking about that stuff.
Thank you. I think the breakthrough for me personally was at my special needs school, when they let me know that you can communicate without speaking. For years I was in, I went to doctors and I went to other like therapies and that other special needs school that just wasn't nice, wasn't good, because they all put the goal to speaking instead of communication. Speaking and communication is two different things. You can communicate without speaking and you could speak without communicating. And I think the breakthrough for me, when I realized that I could communicate without speaking, that I didn't need to speak. Like, it's great that I can, but I was taught that speaking isn't the goal. My school I had a really hard trouble at just, if I was upset or angry, or feeling any sort of way, I couldn't communicate that. Even when I could talk, I just couldn't communicate that. So they would draw like, I don't know, like a smiley face with a speech bubble, and they would write, and they would encourage me to write, and we would have full-on conversations with these like comic strips. And I thought, this is great. This is me communicating. Speaking shouldn't be the goal for autistic people. It should always be communicating, and you can communicate in so many different ways. I feel like when people make us feel like speaking is the end goal, it feels like an impossible goal for most of us, and that can actually cause a lot of issues down the line. So yeah.
So if I will, and I think this statement and everything kind of helped clarify maybe an earlier what might be taken as an assumption, but essentially the key to you being able to speak was you being able to communicate, and the stress of just trying to speak before you could communicate, almost like trying to run. If speaking is running, right, and communicating is walking, you were trying to be taught how to run before you could walk, is the way I'm looking at that. So it sounds like the best thing, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I know Eileen would love to, but I'm asking you, Peri, for the moment. And that is, the best thing parents can do to help their child speak is to not help them speak. It's to help them communicate in the best way that they can. And then the verbal communication will follow if the individual is able to do so. Is that an accurate reflection of your words?
Yes, that is accurate. But yeah, just always communication is the goal. And if verbal communication does follow, then great. But if it doesn't, then that's no biggie. I feel like everyone, even those not on the spectrum, have a chosen way to communicate. And for example, like, I prefer text, like, over phone. Like, just don't, no one should ever call me, and that's just the way that I prefer to communicate, and it shouldn't be looked down like as something bad. And that's the same with autistic children, and that they should just be let to communicate however way that they can.
I want to go back to talk about your personal life, and I know you were working in the food industry. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you left that job pretty recently to work in a preschool, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is that going for you?
Yeah, it's going really, really good. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm learning. I'm learning like so much, and I'm also able to give them some help as well. Like, they ask, regarding certain children and that, and I'm able to go, well, obviously I went to special needs school, so this may help and that may help, or from my experience, this child may be feeling like this because, and I'm able to bring my insight to the table. And it's just really good, because they're so thankful and grateful for it, and they think my ideas are amazing, and that's great. They don't care that I don't they don't care that I'm a bit quiet. They don't care that I don't look at them in the eyes, which I know was a big issue with my other employer, and I'm like, if I've got good ideas and I'm doing the job well, why should I look at your eyeballs, that sort of thing. And they're just, yeah, it's great. And I feel like I've always wanted to work with children, and this is, yeah, I'm definitely happier here. And it's just it's another thing that my family and I was told I would never be able to do, but I'm doing, which is great because I feel like it gives hope to other autistic families, not to be on this level, but to just see that whatever their child can reach, they can, like whether it's, something as big as this or something that maybe people may consider smaller, but is big for them, So yeah, it's great. It's going good.
I'm so impressed with everything you've accomplished, despite what people were telling you you couldn't do, and you didn't listen to any of that, and you did it again. And it's the best way to be stubborn.
Me and Eileen are both very stubborn. That's probably why we're saying so. Stubbornness is the secret to success.
It is.
Yes. Now, one thing that you said that was very interesting is when people are asking you about your experience, you are talking about just your experience. Can you tell us why you don't feel the need to speak for every autistic individual there is? And that was a little bit of sarcasm right there. By the way, I should say, Eileen knows that, anything I say usually is. But can you tell us why you only feel comfortable speaking about your own autism, and how that's still helpful, a belief that Eileen and I both share, but it seems a lot of very loud advocates feel that their autism, they can speak for everyone.
Yeah, well, put it simply, I'm Peri and they're not.
There you go.
And common sense, it sounds like.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I just don't understand why anyone, like, take autism out of the equation for a little bit. Why would you speak on behalf of anyone? They're not you and you're not them. Like, you can only talk about your experiences. Like, there's similarities and there's lines that may like cross over with each other, but at the end of the day, it's your story and you can only talk about your story. I feel like maybe others, they want to sort of say that their autism is our autism, but it's not, because we're all very, very, very different people with very different personalities, which makes our autism and our just very, very different. I don't understand why you would sort of speak about someone else that isn't your own. And that's why I make it so important on my page to let them know, like, this is my insight, this is my personal story. Like, if you can relate your child to it, then great, but like, I just don't want to speak for your child or the parents, or because I don't know them. I only know me. And yeah, it's that simple, really.
Yeah, sure.
I think the world would be a much better place if everyone, autistic or not, would ask those questions.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, we all know that the autism online community can be kind of cruel. And I mean, I can't imagine it's easy for you. It's not easy for anyone. And I love what you said about, well, simply put, I'm Peri, they're not. I mean, nothing else needs to be said. Like, it's just like, yeah, common sense. And but even though it's common sense, there are still going to be people who don't agree with that. And I'm wondering how that affects you when people the backlash on the negativity in the autism community. How is that for you?
Yeah, it used to, it still does, but it used to really, really affect me, because like, I was quite a small page for a while, and then I blew up literally overnight after I wrote a post about what it was like being nonverbal. And that so for a very long while, like, I just got, you know, positive comments all the time, constantly. And that obviously felt really good. And then after a while after that, the negative comments started like coming in. And I think because it was so like abnormal for me to get them, it really sort of bothered me to the point where I would, you know, really watch what I was saying, or I would delete whatever they didn't like and things like that. And I realized I shouldn't really be doing that. Like I shouldn't be censoring myself. Like I've never censored myself in real life. I haven't, like, I don't even know how to do that. Like I'm Peri, this is what you get, like it or hate it. So I don't understand why I was doing it online. And I think it was because I was just used to such the positive attention for so long. And then as years went on, I realized that the autistic online community that I should have fitted into, I really, 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 really didn't. And that bothered me for a while because I couldn't really understand why I didn't. And I didn't, because, you know, I'm autistic adult advocate, you know, I should have fitted in to that very odd crowd. But I didn't. And then that's when the hate sort of ramped up because they felt like I was, I don't know, like going against them. And I guess I was, but like not intentionally. I was just spreading what I believed and was trying to, I didn't like the hate that I was getting and that I was seeing other bloggers was getting. Like in the autistic community, we all want one thing, is to spread awareness of autism. And I didn't really understand why there were so many different levels and different communities, and well, and one very odd community that I would describe as cult, but I can't say that. But yeah, it's a cult. But yes, 100% a cult that I just did not want to be a part of. Like I was here to spread about autism, and I was here to spread about the awareness, all types of awareness, the good, the joy, the ugly, the bad, the, you know, just so yeah, the hate did used to get to me, and now I'm just like, you know, it's online, you know, I can just switch my phone off. Like I've had my page hacked, I've had hate pages created about me, I've had awful threatening like PM messages. I've had like so much, and I just, you know, I think it describes them. It says more about them than it says about me.
Exactly.
So yeah, I have the odd day where it gets me down, and I'm still sort of going, oh, should I write this? Should I write that? Oh, just go ahead. And I just feel like, you know, for all the hate comments, I get so many more positive comments. So that definitely helps. Oh yeah.
I'm so sorry you went through this. I don't know why, but I feel very protective of you, maybe because, you know, you were nonverbal and you're younger, but it just really annoys me that they go after you too. And you know, I feel exactly the same way you do, as in it used to affect me so much. You know, literally I would lose sleep over it. I would cry, I would get really angry, and I would take it out on everyone around me when they would, you know, harass me. And you know, I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't still happen when the harassment is really bad, but I've also reached a point where I know that it's not personal. I mean, a little bit, but at the same time, they do it to everyone. And what they're saying, it's the same all the time. Like you can guess what their next comment is going to be, you know, and it's just a mob mentality. And like you
We
said,
should get an actually autistic magic 8 ball where we just shake it and it gives like one of like ableism. It's your internalized ableism. And that's
Yeah.
the magic 8 ball. Or, ooh, we could make, I bet you a digital magic 8 ball exists. We need to do this. I am excited now. Okay.
Andrew with the ideas. But you know, it's what you said, Peri, that it says more about them than about you when they get mean.
Yeah. Didn't have to, you know, agree with everything that
Yeah.
they say, and they just get angry when you don't. And that's on them. Like, not everyone, it shouldn't have to be a fight to be an advocate. We're all, different, and we all have very different perspectives. And we're speaking about our autism. I don't understand how someone can be like, you should see your autism as a superpower. It's like, excuse me, this is my autism. You don't know what my autism is. Like, you don't know what it is. Like, it's just very odd. I find it very odd. Like, I wouldn't be like going up to someone in a wheelchair and say, don't see it as a disability. Like, it's just odd. It's very odd behavior. But yeah.
You seem so mature. Honestly, it's really impressive to have that outlook. I mean, at 24, I don't think I would have had your views on things. It's really impressive. I gotta say. We're going to ask you some quick fire questions. It's nothing crazy. We just ask you a question and about what you like, and you tell us the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Probably to forge a path away from the things that hold you back. I think that was that was given to me at school, and I was going through there was like a lot of things happening at home, and it was just basically just saying,
I like that. And you did it well. You forged your own path.
Thank you.
What do you like to do to relax?
I like to read or watch TV or write. So either of those things are good.
What's your favorite movie or TV show?
TV show is probably a toss-up between Grey's Anatomy or New Amsterdam. Yeah.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food is probably strawberries. Yeah, I like those.
I love them too. How was it to finally say fuck out loud for the first time?
Yeah.
Andrew just added that question. He's being silly.
Yeah, it's good. I don't actually remember, like, I don't remember when I said it.
It's probably good.
Yeah.
Okay, now is your time to shine. Tell people where they can find you on social media.
Okay. You can find me on Facebook on Not Rain Girl, and you can find me on Instagram on Not Rain Girl as well.
Oh, you're on Instagram. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Honestly, it was really amazing, like talking to you, getting your perspective on things. Right, Andrew?
No, it was really interesting. I don't think I've had a guest, let alone ran into somebody who was able to provide such a a unique perspective. And I'm sure others exist. I just haven't had the chance or opportunity to speak to anyone about a similar situation. So really, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.